Hello, guys. How are you, sir? Thank you guys very much for coming to class today. It's much appreciated for all of us. Actually, I have a question for Roger. Sir, if you could talk about one of your biggest failures and how you came back from that failure and what you did to, keep your mind, screwed on straight after a failure you had in your life. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Wow, you're going to cause me to think hard here. So failure is not a word that I generally use, particularly not in the sales world. But I think if there were probably any failure in my life, it's that I first started out and I fully intended to be an airline pilot. And I never made that. And I found something else. I found a greater calling. And that calling was sales. And I found out that I was a much better salesperson than I ever was pilot. And managed to make a career for 30 plus years out of failing my commercial pilot check ride. So probably the biggest turnabout in a career ever, from intending to be a pilot back in 1988 to finding sales in 1990, and then discovering that probably I never really wanted to be a pilot at the end of it all, and found a much more rewarding career. So that would be my my tidbit of failure. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but
No, sir, it does. Thank you very much.
I can answer that same question real quick. I think kind of what Roger was saying, using the word failure, you might transition that more into an opportunity to be successful from that, or learning from something where you stumbled. For me, in my last sales job, every year you were measured. The great thing about sales is, for one, you never really know how much money you're going to make, because it's an open end. Hopefully your comp plan can make as much money as you want. That's why people get into sales. But I didn't make my number one year. And if you achieved your number for this company I worked for, like a lot of companies, they have what's called President's Club or conference or whatever they call it, right? And you make that number and they send you on a glamorous trip somewhere. And I've been fortunate to travel to different parts of the world on the company's dime. And one year I didn't make it, and I was determined to never let that happen again. And so the following year, I really used that to drive me and become number one on my team and number one in my region. So just like Roger was saying, use it as an opportunity to better yourself.
yeah, I probably made more money as a salesperson than I ever would have as a pilot. I know that for a fact.
Hi, my name is Andra Baskin. How did you choose sales or embark on your sales career and end up in?
So kind of what I just said. So I got into sales because I did not want to be held to an income level or a number. I didn't want to be on salary. I didn't want to, my wife and Professor Young's wife are teachers. There's nothing wrong with teachers, right? But they know what they're going to make. I just always wanted to make as much money as I possibly could. And I never wanted anybody to control that. So that was really the main reason why I got into sales. I remember, being in college, a junior and senior in college, and dying to get out of school to get a job to start making money. I just was dying to make money. So that was as simple as that for me. I don't know about you, Roger.
Yeah, I mean, my path to sales came out of what I just described before, but I would go back and I would tell you this. There's always someone who's extremely influential in your life that usually guides you through something. Now, I will tell you, there were two people for me. My mother was probably the best salesperson that I ever met. However, my mother was a hairdresser, and that doesn't seem to jive. But when you think about it, what does a hairdresser do? What do any of us do? We're either buyers or we're sellers in certain situations. And A hairdresser, very much when the clients come or their clients come to see them, is convincing them of a look, of a style, a certain cut. And no one did that better than my mother. You know, back in the day, my mother could turn a $1 comb out into a $100 permanent wave. And that was quite a task. And at an early age, I saw her be able to do this. She had an incredible gift of the gab. She was able to converse with people who, in lots of cases, didn't want to be conversed with or were having difficulty. She made them warm and felt welcome in their company. And the second person that I met was my mother's brother, who was actually in sales. And, you know, it's funny, when we think about sales as a career, no one ever says when they're 5 or 6 or 7, you know, I want to grow up and I want to be in sales. You know, your mother's on the playground, your father's in the playground with you, and little Johnny always seems to want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a surgeon. But yeah, to be honest with you, you know, I found the most successful people that I've ever been around have been salespeople with incredible careers, selling incredible products. And my uncle was one of those. And he started an airline, and not particularly what you would think was very salesy. But again, when they look back on it, every customer that came, everybody that had to go into that business had to be sold. And he was a very influential part of my career. So I would tell you those two people, when I saw what they were able to accomplish, I took my first step. My first job in sales was as a rep for Shell Oil. Not, you know, a glamorous sales job by any means, but, you know, one with an open compensation plan, one with the freedom to be able to sell as much as I could, to make as much as I could. And, you know, that led on to other things. I worked at ADP in my career, and then I had a long career at American Express, and now I'm on Visa. But, you know, these are things that influence you along the way, and people that influence you along the way. So hopefully that answers your question and helps you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophie. My question to the both of you, first of all, thank you for being here. My question would be, what is the most valuable sales lesson you would give to someone who's just starting in sales, marketing, in the sector? Thank you.
Go ahead, Roger, you want to lead the way on that?
Yeah. No, well, that's a great question, Sophia. You know, I don't know that there's one single thing that you can look at. You know, selling encompasses, and I'm sure Zeb in your class is doing a wonderful job of teaching you what so many don't teach. You know, you think about colleges in this country today, you can go and get a degree in pretty much everything, but yet very few, if any, offer a 4-year degree in sales. And yet, you know, over 46 million people in this country get up every day or engaged in some sort of selling of some kind. So there has to be some merit to the profession. We often gravitate to the lesser ends of sales, but when we sell a valuable product and, you know, we're working for a company and we feel that what we're doing is justified, there are a lot of things that go into that. I've seen Zeb, and I've seen a lot of the stuff that he's published, and he's steering you guys in the right direction with relationships and building relationships. But I would add on top of that as well, because that's key to being successful in sales. It's be curious, be present. You know, in the world today, so many people are there, but they're not there. You know, having that ability to recognize things, the emotional intelligence is critical. You know, what students learn today in school, you know, may look like theory. When you get out in the real world and you apply this, you'll see that people react in different ways, and you have to be able to adapt to that. Consume knowledge. You know, be direct, be firm. Outwork your opponent. You know, always have options for your clients. These are all things that are extremely important. But the number one thing when I hire salespeople is I want salespeople that are extremely curious, ask questions, you know, want to know what it is that makes your customer tick. because they will buy from people they trust, but they will waste time talking to people that they like. And you want them to trust you so that they'll buy from you. So hopefully that gives you some sense of where my head is with this.
Thank you, that was great.
So that's a great question. I love that question because I thought the exact same thing when I want to get into sales. Well, what do I want to sell? I never really honed in on that, right? And it's kind of an odd way to answer that question, but one key thing is, what do I not want to sell? What is it that I don't want to do? I mean, that's kind of a key thing as well. And then you can get into like the nitty gritty of, all right, do I want to sell a product? Do I want to sell a service? Do I want to travel for work? Do I not want to travel? So there's a lot of those questions that I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to go to hospitals. I don't want to have to constantly be at an airport and fly into cities up and down the East Coast or wherever. Or maybe you do want to do that. It's a nice vehicle to see the world or the country, you know, in different cities. But I think the key thing that you'll find, whether it is a product or service, somebody where you can create or sell in an environment where there's repeat customers. So if I just sell my product or service to Roger, do I have an opportunity to sell additional services to him? Or is kind of that it? I sold him the service. I now got to move on to Professor Young. I got to sell him the product or service, or, you know, so, but I think the key thing, and any really successful salespeople will tell you this, is you got to be passionate about what you sell. You really got to enjoy what you're selling because people can see it. You can see right through what you're telling them or what you're saying to them. If you're just going through your pitch and it's just, you know, it's kind of boring, and, you know, people can definitely sense that you really have a passion for yourself. So.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lily. I'm a senior studying sales here. I have two questions. One, both of you guys can answer, and then one's for Roger. What's like a skill or lesson you learned early in your sales career that you still carry with you or like made an impact on you still today? And then Roger, I was just wondering what the photo on your computer was with Boston University. A few of my family members went there too, so I was just wondering.
So very intuitive. So great. I like to have pictures and stuff in the background that prompts conversation. So my youngest son, this is where I actually met Zeb. I met him in the underneath in the locker rooms at BU. My son played at BU and graduated from there last May. My second son graduated from the University of New Hampshire, both hockey players. Kind of rare. They were from Florida, but played hockey in the Northeast. So, but anyway, your question was, what stood with me from early on in my sales career? Am I correct with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say, you know, probably the thing that's held true for me for most of my career has been work ethic. Now, you know, a lot of these things sound very cliche, but there's a lot of merit to it. You know, in sales, you know, the goal is not to work hard, it's work smart. But certainly when you're starting off your career, putting in the time and the effort to do things, simple little things like researching accounts and knowing who you're selling to and what are their hot buttons or what's the information. I'll give you an example. Somebody in the class here yesterday looked me up on LinkedIn. I saw that today because I can see who looks at my profile. I apologize, I should know who that was, but somebody looked at me. And I thought that was quite outstanding because, you know, if you're going to have someone come in and talk to you, hey, I have no idea who they are. Let me just take a peek at it. I can have as much information as I want today. And that's the type of curious behavior that I was talking about before. So, you know, that work ethic where you do more than the other person can never be harmful to you. It's when you decide to do less than the other person, then that's when you get into a little bit of trouble. So I found always outworking those individuals. Does that mean staying till midnight in my office? No, that means working smart to get information that you need, retaining information that you've been given, understanding training that you've received or product knowledge, and not having to seek out the same information over and over again. The great thing about sales is it is repetitive. So we should get exceptionally good at it the more we do it, because we get to practice over and over and over again. And if you stay with a product and a company a long time like I did, it doesn't even seem like selling in the end, because you become so proficient in it. Even though the person you're selling to them, it's the first time for them, it's the 10,000th time for you. So the beauty of it is that repeat, wash, and rinse over and over again makes you better and better. So I would say work ethic for me is probably the one thing over my career that I learned.
So for me, early on, my father was in sales. That also was helped lead me towards sales that I wanted to get into. But actually the best lesson I ever learned was from a guy that owns a company called New England Bartending, and he was a regular at a bar. And I bartended for 12 years down in Charlestown. And he would say to me, and I took this into sales, I still take it every day with me. And actually Professor Young has got a knack for this. So he said to me, read the room. And I think about that all the time. Read the room. So what is my crowd right now? Right. So I walk in here, it's Monday before Thanksgiving. You guys just want to go home. You want to go home to, see your high school buddies. You want to go see your family. It's like 2 days before it's time to go. Maybe you're going tomorrow. I mean, he's got a football sweatshirt on. The season's over. Like he's checked out. He's ready to go home, right? So I'm reading the room. Well, I gotta keep your attention. You walk into a sales call, and you just did it with Roger. You're reading the room. What's that picture about Bentley? I'm sorry, BU, which I hate BU. I went to BC. But that's okay. I'm gonna, if I'm gonna sell Roger, I'm gonna talk about BU, even though I don't want to, right? You may walk into a sales call and as a picture over the person's, shoulder that they love hunting. I don't like hunting. I don't want to go camping or any of that stuff, but I'm going to talk about that because that's what they like, right? And so, one of the first times I met Professor Young, he was doing that. We were at a restaurant. And he was working the crowd. He was working the room, and he still does that. If we walk into a hockey rink, a restaurant, a school event, wherever we are. And so, I still do that to this day.
Roger, is that true?
It is absolutely true, Zach,
Right.
man. You're the king of working the room, bud.
So read the room wherever you are. You're going to understand people's temperament. What is motivating them right now? Where is their mind at? I can just see it on your face. Was I accurate on that? Yeah. Football season's over. All right. So
I will say this. It really is fascinating in this sense. Like we talked about it earlier tonight about connections. Everyone's a connection. Everyone's a connection. We're selling something every single day. And Roger was correct. I met him in the basement of the BU rink. My son was skating and we just started talking. And I said, you're in sales? I teach a class at Bentley University. Would you like to speak to my students? And this was what, a year ago, maybe,
Probably.
and here he is. So it just goes to show you everybody is a connection. Same thing with Nick. We've known each other now for a few years and he actually was the transcended the way that I teach. He introduced me to that guy, Jack Falvey, that we've talked about. It was because of him in our backyard, August 6th of that year. I'll never forget it. That was how things happened. Everybody is a connection. Don't be afraid to go up and say hello to somebody because it can lead to moments like this where I got a great quote. People will buy from people they trust, right? People will buy from people that they like. I learned something new tonight already. So next, go for it, Liz.
Hi, Nick. Hi, Roger. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Liz, and I have questions for both of you. So one of my weaknesses that I haven't told everybody here is that I'm very afraid of challenges, like changes, and I can train my mentality to always be ready for it. So I want to ask a question that how do you train your mentality? Is challenges a natural thing that comes to you, or do you have to like work on it? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's, I feel like that's that challenge, that you brought up just about walking into a place that you're not familiar with, or you're not comfortable yet, or you don't know how the sales call is gonna go. I'm walking into a board meeting and there's a bunch of executives there, and man, I really gotta knock it out of the park because the pressure's on, right? That's just something that's just always gonna be there. I don't know if you can ever really make it go away. I think the confidence in knowing that you know what you want to talk about and they don't, just always remember that. Like if you're presenting a product or a service, just remember, you know the product better than your customer does. They don't know it. So just, even if you might say the wrong thing, just be confident in saying it, right? But that's definitely, you're always gonna get the butterflies, any challenges that come your way, and roll with it,
Thank you.
Yeah, Liz, I would tell you that I'm a challenger by nature. Zeb will probably take you guys through this, but there are certain challenger sales training that you can take. There's many different methods of selling, but the challenger method is one I particularly like because it best suits my personality. Now, I don't think I was always that way. At least that's what my wife says, and I've been married for 34 years, so she begs to differ on that. But I would tell you that, and I think we hit on this there, confidence is the key in selling. So, I sell to a lot of C-suite executives, and they don't get a lot of traffic. And the question is why? So why, if C-suite executives make decisions, and I'm a big believer in top-down selling, why do not a lot of people engage them? And the answer is they're afraid. They're afraid to talk to them. They're afraid that they might get outsmarted, or this person's a smart person, and they might, shout at me or know more than I do. Well, shame on us. If we're selling a product, it's incumbent upon us to know more about our product and our sales process than anybody out there. We are the experts in what we do and how we do. And they tend to be the experts in what they do and how they do. And it's matching those two expertises together is where the sales magic happens. But if we're not confident, if we don't know our information, if we don't know what it is that we're trying to accomplish, if we don't know what questions we want to ask, and again, it's quite natural for someone coming out of college and taking this course to feel that way. What will change that for you is immersing yourself in a repeated sales process. And over time, you will come to realize that the magic is made by you, that the fear is in your head. And that when you practice this and when you go out and you have that confidence, you can sell anybody. In fact, I would argue CEOs and CFOs tend to be the easiest people I sell to because they're limited on time. They usually make very, very quick decisions. They don't elongate things. They don't analyze things to death. And they tend to be people who make decisions in a much more rapid fashion. So they're easier people to sell.
Thank you so
So
much.
hopefully that gives you some. I noticed, it's probably not natural for you to come up and ask a question in front of a group like that. But if you did that 1,000 times, you wouldn't even do it.
Thank you.
Sure. Who? That guy. I know that name, yeah.
How's it going? I'm Gavin Kelly. I got a little Irish in me, if you can't tell from the last name, and I saw that you went to the University of Dublin, and how your time over there and your experiences has related to how you've found success, and maybe how could we use some of the things that you learned for studying abroad or going to college or abroad for 4 years.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Gavin Kelly. Wow, that's an Irish name for you there for sure. Yeah, my last name was McNamara. I was actually born in the US, but went to grade school, went to high school, went to college in Dublin. and came back to this country when I was 26 in 1988. You know, I would tell you the first time that I went to Ireland to live and go to school was a huge cultural shock for me. So here I was, this little American kid going to Ireland, and I was like a fish out of water. And then I made the reverse and came back to the US. And after graduating college, again, it was a very, I won't say difficult experience. It was a eye-opening experience because Ireland at that time was, you know, still a quaint, nice, normal place. I mean, I worked for a big oil company. You know, there were really no such thing as contracts. We did everything on a handshake. And I remember getting my first sales job in the US when I arrived here. And the simplest little deal, I had to have a contract. And I said to my boss at the time, I said, why do we have to sign a contract with these people? Well, welcome to America. You know, everything is litigious and everything is contract oriented. So that was probably the biggest change. But business is business, no matter where. And I think what Ireland taught me was that Irish people are storytellers, and selling and storytelling go hand in hand. People want you to socialize and tell them why things are good for their business. And how do you know that? Well, you have experiences where you've sold them into others, and you can relate to what they're doing and how others have used your product successfully. And telling that story helps you in selling your product. So I would tell you that if you have any Irish in you, you already are ahead of the game in telling a story. Use that to your advantage.
That was great. Thank you, Roger.
Hi, hello. My name is Kaya. I'm a marketing major here at Bentley. I'm a senior. But I did have a sales internship over the summer. And while I didn't make any sales calls, I saw people who did. And it looks terrifying, in my opinion. I am terrified of making a sales call, and I think it is because I fear rejection. And I was wondering if you ever had that fear, either of you ever had that fear of rejection, and how you got over the hump. Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say most salespeople, getting into sales, they first go on their first few rounds with their manager. It's absolutely terrifying. Yeah, I mean, I have to walk out with the sale. Like I got probably have your boss with you because he's not just gonna let you go. So now you feel like you have even more pressure. Like this guy is gonna think, or woman, man, why'd I hire this person? They don't know what they're doing. But it's all, you know, a game of numbers for one, and just preparation. But it just gets more and more comfortable being in front of people, overcoming objections. But I think one key thing is the biggest mistake young salespeople make in their career is they think they're going to sell in their first call. It's not going to happen. I mean, you might, but you got to ask yourself, is this sale ready? Have I done everything to tee this up where it is ready for the sale? And I think that's the biggest mistake, you know, that I've seen in, you know, doing role playing or stuff that I did when I was a young sales rep. Just the mistakes I made was I was asking questions and not even listening to the answer because I just wanted to get to the next thing to tell them all about my products. At the very end, I could say, so you're going to buy it? You know, and not actually listening to the questions that I should have been asking, and that, you know, their answers were leading me down a path. The person might have been saying, well, I'm not ready, but I'm going to be ready at the, you know, in the new year, because you know, it'll hit next year's budget. All right, he just told you that he can buy, but he's already, you know, used the budget maybe this year, but it's all conversational, right? That's how you want to keep it in any sales call at the beginning. And not, you know, have that mindset where I have to sell whatever I'm selling right now. Okay, because that's most of the time it's not going to happen in the first call. But I think that's the best way to help, you know, overcome, just keeping it conversational. Just talk to the person and, you know, learn about them, you know, see if you can, you know, tell them about you. You know, I think, you know, what Roger was saying is telling a story. one of the key things somebody told me is tell them your story. Tell them the Nick Egirous story. I'm from Waltham. I went to Boston College. I had an older brother, went to Holy Cross, played football there. I played football growing up. Read the room a little bit, find out what interests them. Maybe you got a connection there. You know, looking over his shoulder to see what some of the other stuff. I can't read the print on some of it, but there's, you know, some books and some more pictures there. He's got a picture of his family over his shoulder there. You know, how many kids do you have? How old are they? Just, you know, it's all conversational, getting to know somebody so that, you know, they start to trust you and want to buy from you. And then, you know, then you can do a little bit more of your needs analysis to whatever you're selling. Well, making it conversational is the best advice I would give.
Yeah, I think they're phenomenal points, Sean. You know, you said you're terrified. So you're going to have to deal with rejection, but let me see if I can compartmentalize this for you a little bit. So recently, I told you I was a pilot. Recently, I learned to fly the Airbus A320 aircraft. That's a pretty big airplane. It's about 173 feet long by wingspans about 120 feet. Carries upwards of 200 people. If you want fear, look back at the people looking forward when you're flying that airplane. And now think about selling. There's no comparison. You'll deal with rejection. You'll get rejected, but you get rejected because you haven't uncovered the true need of that individual. And once you learn to uncover true needs, you will deal with any objection that comes your way, and you will learn to cut down on rejection. In fact, as a salesperson, we should welcome getting objections from our customers, because that is the guiding light to show us where we need to go. Now, in the process of doing that, you will be rejected over and over and over again. And people will tell you, don't take it personally. Trust me, take it personally. It will make you better. When you don't make the sale, and you don't make the commission, and you don't earn the money, you're the one that's affected by that. But when you do make the sale, when you do make the money, when you go to President's Club year after year, when you're wining and dining in the Bahamas or in St. Martin in Hawaii, you will have overcome that rejection, and that fear will pale in significance. So I would say selling is not even close to some of the other things I've done in my life. But you feel that way because you haven't gone out and experienced it. And once you do, you will think much different.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for answering our questions tonight, guys. My name is Ellie Wheeler, and my question is, what ultimately made you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in sales, and what do you wish you had known before starting in the sales field?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I asked this question in my own sales training classes that I give, and people give me like these answers like they like people, or they like to be in a room, or center of attention. And I scratch all those. But listen, the only one reason I wanted to be in sales was to become economically independent, financially independent, to control my income. To the more I sold, the more I made. I've been very fortunate to sell, you know, for 4 big brands in my career. And the products were phenomenal, and you know, the income potential was virtually limitless. You know, there's great responsibility with that too. So earning money and being fiscally responsible come hand in hand. So, you know, while sales affords you that opportunity, being responsible. In my organization, the best salespeople made more or as much as the senior vice presidents. Sometimes that's not always the case, but the reason I got into sales, hands down, money. I wanted that independence. I wanted that flexibility too. I've worked virtual since 1994, before people even knew what that was. I can't recall the last time I've ever gone to an office. What you see here is in my home. I don't go to a place. I control my schedule. I control my income, and you know, that's what I've always wanted to do.
I would say, so first part of the question was, why'd you ultimately get into sales, right?
Mhm.
So, one of my dad's really good friends, when I was still a senior in college, I interviewed with him to sell liquor for, he worked for a company called, it's probably a conglomerate now, the Allied Domecq, and they sold a bunch of, various brands. And so I met him for an interview in Boston, and it was him and another manager, and he said to me, one of the questions was, why do you want to get into sales? And it was my first interview. I think I stumbled all over the place. I probably had a clip-on tie on because I didn't know how to do a tie and whatever. And, the other manager got up and went to the bathroom, and my dad's friend was there, and he hits me, he goes, "Hey, there's actually, well, the other manager had said, there's no right or wrong answer, whatever." He got up, went to the bathroom. My dad's friend hits me and goes, "There actually is a correct answer to that question." I said, "What is it?" He said, "Because you want to make a lot of money." Tell him that, because if you're the sales rep and you're making a lot of money and he's your boss, he's making a lot of money too. So I always remembered that, that was like the ultimate thing was that economic flexibility where you controlled your own paycheck, like Roger said, and then the second part of the question was about
What do you
what
wish?
do you wish you knew? For me, I just wish I had a little bit more of an open mind to what else was out there. So I was pretty loyal to the first 2 sales jobs that I had, because I thought I was doing great and I was successful making President's Club trips, but it wasn't until one of our other teammates left and went and sold medical device and opened my eyes to that, and I really love that. So I just always keep an open mind to all opportunities. There's a lot of things in this world that you can sell. You can make a lot of money and you can travel and, be rewarded for it. So just keep an open mind. That would be the best advice I wish I'd give myself.
Plus, salespeople are the coolest people in an organization, hands
Yeah.
down. I just said that, okay?
Roger and Nick, thanks for coming out tonight. My name's Dom DePauli. I'm a senior here. My question is for both you guys. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your sales career that's made you a better person, husband, father, etc.?
I'll take a quick stab at that one. That's easy. So I'm married with 3 kids, and start that by saying I'm married. So the key thing as a salesperson is listen. So I'm married for 16 years, 15 years. Listen, because that will help you be a better person, be a better salesperson, be a better father, sibling, aunt, uncle, whatever. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the nail on the head. Although if my wife's listening somewhere in the house today, she's probably saying that guy's full of what. I am actually a terrible listener, and I in my developmental plans over the years, I really tried hard to work on this, and that probably is the single most thing that we can always be better at. But I would tell you just right on, I would agree everything that you said there about listening. Very important relationships. Everything you do, and relationships with your bosses, your staff. But one of the other things I would say about my selling career is, skin in the game. Particularly when I led salespeople, if people felt that I was working as hard as they were always willing to go the extra mile. So if I'm, don't do as I do as I say is not a good adage. You want to have people do as you do, and you will bring them along with the journey. And I think in my career, that's probably the thing that has held with me most is people would see my work ethic and see that I was there on the sales call with them, traveling halfway across the country to get there. Whatever it took to get the sale to help them get it, they appreciated that. I think that's really good.
Can I ask a question too? Does anybody in this room know? Well, you want to be in sales, but if you do Do you know what you want to sell? I'm just curious if, just curious. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you for coming. Thank both of you for coming. My name is Alexander. I'm a senior. I want to be in sales. I want to be in distribution, wholesale products, dry groceries, things like that. I've worked on 3 jobs actually as an intern for a couple companies in Miami, and then I moved to Mexico last summer, worked 2 months in distribution there, and that's what I would like to do.
It's good.
Did you say Miami?
Yeah,
Where in Miami and what company?
Medley. In Doral, I don't know if you've been.
Sure.
The company's called Promo International. They're a distribution company that distributes dry groceries, shampoos, healthcare products to the Caribbean and South America. I don't know
Yeah,
if you've heard of the company.
Yep, very familiar with Medley. That's great that you know what you want to get into. I mean, there's 1,000 things that can be sold. Unfortunately, when we think about selling, we think of the common things, which very few people, probably coming from a program like yours will get involved in. But, there's so many things. I mean, I work in the financial services sector, and it's really limitless. You think of manufacturing, aviation, construction, everything out there needs to be bought and sold, and it needs people to do that. So, whatever your passion is, again, you probably won't make money in your passion, but if you're good at selling, you certainly will make money at that. If I was good at my passion, then I would have been an airline pilot. I guess is what I'm saying.
How do you play for Patriots? All right, 14 minutes. Staying awake here.
Hi, my name's Karine. I'm a management major and a senior here at Bentley. And you both talked about the importance of building relationships in sales. But my question for you both is, how do you approach a client or a rep that you don't mesh well with?
Say that again, last bit, that you don't what?
That you don't mesh well with, personally, you just don't click with them.
Yeah, it's a great question because it's going to happen. And I've definitely had those scenarios. I'm sure you have, Roger, as well.
Yeah.
And that's when I just go back to read the room, read the person. All right, this person's all business. I never have those. Yeah. Well, you got you go on a sales call and the person literally puts their watch down and says, all right, you got 11 minutes. This guy does not want to talk about where he's from, right? He just wants you to go over your product, your service, or maybe you just need to set up another time to sit down and where he's in a better mood or something like that. But it happens where you don't gel with somebody and, you really got to kind of play by their rules or, you're not going to get very far. But I try to punt in that situation and, see if you can maybe set up a time when, they're having a better day. It may come to it that you do set up that second call and they're still as grumpy as they were the first time. And hey, it is what it is. If they're the buyer, they're the purchasing manager, find out what they need, what are they looking for? So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, so I would have asked you a number of questions out of your question. So the first question I would always say to somebody is, how do you know that you don't mesh with them? So what we sometimes do is we go into calls with preconceived notions. Back in my Amex days, I sold a big retailer on acceptance called Loman's. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the brand. It was a chain store out of New York City. And one of my colleagues, when I was given the account, said, don't waste your time on that account. They hate us. They'll never accept American Express. And had I been the type of person that was easily swayed, I probably would have listened to that advice. However, I didn't. And I wrote the CEO a letter, got an appointment with him, flew up to New York to see him. And when I sat down with him, the first question I said to him was, why do you hate us? And he said, I don't hate you. I don't even know you, he said. So what that taught me was that never go into these sales calls with preconceived notions. I do agree. You got to read the room. You got to know how and what happened. So on the off chance that when you read the room, there isn't a mesh, there's a couple small things you can do. You can ask why. It's a very ballsy move, but you can do it. You can use humor, which sometimes can get you out of that, but you really have to understand your audience to do that and where you go. Or you can just accept it and usually be no better off for it. I mean, usually not in favor of the third option there. So there's lots of things, but you're going to have to, as a salesperson, have this innate ability inbuilt in you. I can't tell you if you have it or you don't, but you will know how to navigate out of that skillfully and artfully and manage still to come out on the other end, because you're going to meet a lot of people that don't want what you're selling. And you're going to have to navigate through that the best way you can, but don't automatically succumb to what you've heard. Go in with an open mind and then maneuver your chess pieces from there.
Thank you. Hi, Nick. Hi, Roger. I'm Juliana Yavarone, a senior student here at Bentley University. Today, we were talking about showing gratitude and how important it is to create authentic relationships. So my question is, what are some examples of how you show gratitude to your clients?
John, do you want to go first?
I would say, some of the simplest things go a long way, like a handwritten note. Thanking somebody. A lot of the times, people have business cards or, but I always use those to follow up with the person. But it could even be something, in small talk, you were talking with them about some of the things that they like or whatever. They're talking about how they're getting ready to go to their son's championship football game or something. And well, maybe the game's on Thursday, send an email on Friday morning. Hey, or the next time you talk to them, hey, how'd your son's team make out? Or little things like that go a long way, that I've felt to help build relationships, get the person to like you, trust you. So kind of shows that you care, even though you might not, but just, take those kind of notes and remember what's important to them. The same will be true when you're doing a needs analysis on your business or the product or service you're selling. Listen to them about what is important to them and follow up with that, really hone in on that. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Being authentic, genuine enthusiasm. Again, all cliches we talk about, but when you interact with your own friends and when they're not being truthful or contrived, you sense it. Well, prospects are the same. They get that vibe off you. When you leave, they'll be saying, "Hey, I didn't get a good vibe from her or him. I didn't really like that person." And sometimes that's unfortunate. You can't do anything about it, but you can control when you go in there how genuine, how authentic you are, to show enthusiasm. I said it before, be present. So many people today are not present. Simple little tricks. You go into a sales call, lose your phone. When your phone buzzes, I can't tell you how many people I see in sales calls today. Their phone buzzes, they're talking to a prospect and they pick up their phone to look at their phone. And we just saw the story of the FTX founder, I forget his name, Friedman, whatever his name is. You guys probably know better than I do. He's playing video games while he's talking to institutional investors. Yeah, he's not present. No wonder his company is struggling. I mean, simple things like that. I think you control your destiny. And by being smart and being authentic and present, you'll cut down on all those things and be able to create those authentic relationships with people very easily. I mean, sellers have been doing this for an awfully long time. We just happen to jet us into this period of time, but people have been selling since, Methuselah was a child. So, there's plenty of room for us here.
Thank you.
Sorry, Zab, I gave a biblical reference there.
Oh, it's all good. I caught it.
Hello, guys. My name is Anthony. I'm currently a first generation third-year student here at Bentley, pursuing an economics and finance major. My question for you guys is, have you guys ever had an exceptional month in which your sales are just over the roofs? And then next month, you just absolutely have an awful month. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I tended to sell a product that was an annual goal. So I never really had, when I was in ADP, it was very monotonous. You had a weekly goal, never mind a monthly goal. But in those cases, you got to recognize what it is that you're selling and how you're selling it and what your cadence is. And that's the whole prospect around having a pipeline that's deep and rich, and that you're not just selling, but you're prospecting. You're discovering, you're presenting, you're closing, you're doing all those things in your sales cycle constantly, so that you're not caught at a point where, I'm just closing business. Yeah, I've sold 3 deals in a quarter, and sizable ones, and had none the next quarter, but had a yearly goal, so it didn't matter. So understanding how your product works, important. Not just getting the product and running blindly out to sell it. You got to plan, you got to think about it. You got to dissect things, you got to lay it out. Listen, if I make this many calls and have this many appointments and I close this many deals, here's the way it's going to look for me. Discussing that with your leader in sales is key, that communication. So it's just so that you're not in those peaks and valleys. There are products that occurs. There are companies that allow for that. But that's all situational in whatever product that you're selling. So that's a great question, but it would be like if someone were selling cars, I don't think that would be a great scenario for me. But like I was in selling large merchants, American Express acceptance, didn't matter if I sold one in January and another one in December. If I met my goal for the year, I met my goal for the year. So different products, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I think this applies a lot to, fast sales cycles. So, if you're keeping like your pipeline, whatever you sell, always filled, hopefully the peaks and valleys are not as big. Roger mentioned he worked for ADP. Is that correct, Roger?
Yeah.
So my first 7 years out of school, I worked for Paychex, which was ADP, and Paychex were UPS and FedEx, Coke and Pepsi, for the payroll service arena. And so my rookie year, I was 24 years old. I sold the parent company that did payroll for 560 Dunkin' Donuts from here to South Philadelphia. I was #1 in the country. And the most pressure I had in my sales career was the sophomore slump. But I start my next year, I can't fall on my face. I was just #1 in the country. Like I can't. What if I don't make my number? Like that pressure was incredible. But I think that's what drove me, to not fall on my face that following year. But it'll happen. The peaks and valleys of the highest of highs with a sale, and the lowest of lows when you're having a bad day. You're not jiving or seeing eye to eye with your customers. Getting close here. 2 minutes. We're not going over here. I know it's Thanksgiving break. Everybody wants to go home.
Well, I'm gonna put a stop to it. I want to make sure that I